please click on the globe icon below, or at Dejan, you can go to the corner of the room to get materials. The board has changed the public comment format. We have opportunities on non-agenda items in person through the Zoom app and by telephone at the beginning of the meeting. Public comment will last for 1 hour. The time allotted for each speaker is 2 minutes. If you are attending the meeting in person, you will need to submit a request to address the board form to indicate your desire to speak on an agenda item. After it's been turned into staff, they are placed in order of when they are turned in. We also call on speakers one at a time and alternating between public comment at Dejan and one on Zoom. If you're participating via Zoom, you will need to raise your hand by clicking the appropriate icon in the Zoom app or by pressing *9 if accessing the meeting by phone. No yielding of time or substitution of speaker is permitted. The public will also have the opportunity to make public comment on agenda items after the staff presentation for each discussion and action item. The public will have 10 minutes per item and 1 minute per speaker. Due to the Brown Act, board members cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda and do not usually respond to items presented in public comment. I now yield to Chairperson Hughes for her welcoming statement.
I'd like to welcome you tonight and thank all the district personnel who put a lot of work into their presentation to make this a success. Our chairperson, Brandon, is not here tonight, and he and his family are on vacation in Texas to watch the solar eclipse today. So he had told me a couple of months ago he couldn't make it, and then we found out that the meeting was going to be tonight. So he's not here today. He would like to thank you for coming and encourage us to work together to make this a success. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now let's move our speakers. First, we have
Ahora vamos a empezar.
if you are willing and able,
Y
please
ustedes
rise.
están y pueden levantarse, por favor, levántense para la bandera, los sonidos a la bandera.
So you see now it's interfering, no?
Just 1 second, everyone. We're going to make sure
Un
we fix
segundo
that.
cada persona, por favor. Todavía no estás como intérprete. No, no está ya, no.
Are we good?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Dr. Hurst, will you please do the land acknowledgement?
Absolutely. We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Karkin, Ohlone peoples, and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy.
Thank you so much. I will now read the labor and body recognition. I acknowledge that the burden of environmental exploitation and systemic injustice falls upon the labor of Black and brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. I remember that Black and brown people were born and died working this land against their will for generations. Also acknowledge the continued contribution of the labor of survivors over the centuries to today, of all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples in the building of what we refer to as the United States. Dr. Hurst, can we have roll call, please?
Absolutely. First, for our Board of Education, President Smith Folds,
Good evening, everyone present.
Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, absent. Trustee Christian, present. Trustee Reckler,
Good evening, I'm present.
Trustee Phillips. Trustee Phillips is absent. Chairperson Brendan Javier Dalton, absent. Lorraine Humes,
Present.
Don Gosney. I'm here. Jai Ma, not here. Glenn Johnson, absent. Ariel C.
Present.
Thank you very much, and that concludes our roll call.
Thank you. We are now on agenda item A5. I'm going to read it again. WCCUSD public comment, how to address the board. Members of the public are invited to speak to the board about any matter that is not otherwise on the agenda and related to issues affecting public education in WCCUSD. Public comment will last approximately 60 minutes. The time allotted for each speaker is 2 minutes. Individuals wishing to speak must submit a WCCUSD public comment form or participating via Zoom. Individuals need to raise their hand in the Zoom app prior to the beginning of this item. Due to the Brown Act, board members cannot discuss the items that are not on the agenda and do not usually respond to items presented in public comment. Staff, do we have any initial public comment?
We do have one public comment.
Thank you.
Jack Wayer.
Jack?
My name is Jack Weir. I graduated of speech and the Pullman Elementary Schools in the last century. I'm well prepared, highly educated. I'm the director of the Contra Costa Taxpayers Association. We are the only bona fide taxpayer advocacy organization in Contra Costa County as certified by the county clerk authority. And it is our responsibility to nominate taxpayer representatives on the Prop 39 Citizen Bond Oversight Committees throughout the county. We currently have 9 people serving as taxpayer representatives on various citizen bond oversight committees. I currently serve on 3 myself. I'm very happy to see the district take action to deal with 2 specific problems that cocoa tax brought to the district attention for a long time. One is the composition of the bond oversight committee. One of the requirements of Prop 39 that we negotiated back in 2000, when that proposition was passed, was to establish an independent bond oversight committee representing a cross-section of the population in each district. And there are specific segments of that cross-section that are supposed to be represented. The bond oversight committee for a very long time. This district has not been in compliance with that requirement. In addition, the bylaws of the district established for this committee inflated or increased the number of members required on the committee, so that it has been very difficult. As I noted on the board tonight, for the committee to be able to achieve a quorum in many instances, it's hard for them to do business under the Brown Act and other considerations. So I'm very happy to see you take action. I would like to see the district put some completion dates on your plans so that we can follow and be aware of the progress that you're making. But I do applaud the action that the board has taken to deal with that particular issue. The other issue I want to bring up is the result of the forensic audit. I see I'm running out of time. Keep at it. That's very important to follow through on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you so much for your comment. We're just trying to fix one more audio problem. We are now looking at agenda review and adoption. Are there any corrections to the agenda, any changes, any edits? Seeing none, the agenda is so adopted. We are now going to do comments from the board president and the CBOC chairperson. Chairperson Humes, if you'd like to go first.
Thank you. Just wanted to give some background to any, the public that is listening. The CBOC came to the district and we found some things that were going on that were not following the laws, the education code. We listed them. Then Dr. Hurst held a meeting. Jack Weir, the taxpayer, from the Taxpayer Association, was there. And they decided, we told them our problems. They decided to have a committee form, and the committee would give us a time date and look into the problems that we're not following the ed code. And, the next month, I believe, at the March meeting, right before March meeting, Louis told us that they had met, and then we got this joint meeting, and so we're very pleased with the speed that this is taking. Just hope we keep the momentum up and meet accomplish our goals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson Hume. For my statement, I absolutely echo everything that's in the computer and echo what you had to say. Thank you so much. I appreciate staff getting this joint CBOC meeting on the book so quickly and us following through with all the requests that we had from CBOC and for the district doing an amazing job and coming here tonight. And this is just one of two. We have another joint meeting that we have scheduled to fulfill our compliance with having joint CBOC and board meeting. Okay, everyone, let's get started. So we are on agenda item B. We have 3 discussion items. The public will have the opportunity to make public comment on each discussion item after the staff presentation. The time allotted for the public comment on each discussion item will be no more than 10 minutes and 1 minute per speaker. This evening, everyone, we as a body are doing 3-minute questions, 2-minute comments. If we need to do another round of questions, we will, but we're starting with starting with 3 comments and 2 minutes. I'm just having a hot mess time. 3 questions, 2-minute comments. All right? Great, we're all excited. Okay, here we go. Staff, we're at CBOC recruitment plan. Ms. Forrest, I believe this is your item.
It is. Can everyone hear me okay?
No.
No? A little louder?
Yeah.
That's okay?
I can hear you.
Good evening, everyone.
Hold on 1 second. Trustee Reckler, can you hear or no?
No, kinda.
I mean, point of order, can we get a mic? And why aren't we mic tonight?
The mic is feeding to the owl, the delay.
Just 1 second.
What if we have our speakers come up to the front, closer to the owl and closer
Be good.
to the group? Does
Yeah.
that work?
I don't know if that's going because I'm so close to the owl. Maybe that's not that good.
I hope this is okay. Can I? Volume, it's okay?
Point of order. For the public record, I am hard of hearing. This room is very difficult for me. Very difficult. I've said it a number of times. It makes it really hard for me to come here and participate.
So let's do
That
this.
concludes my comment.
Let's make sure that trustee Reckler can hear, but even if we move trustee Reckler here or move that closer this way to her area. Everyone give us 1 second. We're gonna make sure that we have all accommodations. Just 1 second. So if we take the table and maybe move it over a little bit, Ms. Forrest, we're gonna move you over a little bit, so trustee Reckler can hear this from here.
Perfect, okay.
The owl has full cable issues.
Let's see.
I'll hold back.
Why don't you rotate?
Rotate the table. That way. Yeah.
It's a teacher in the language.
Okay.
Let's see if that works. All right. Okay. So try using your teacher's voice and let's see where we are.
Can everyone hear me? You could actually hear better on the, do it together here.
Trustee Christian, can you hear? Yes?
Everyone can hear me?
Chairperson Humes, can you hear?
Yeah?
You can hear?
Can the public
Trust-
hear?
Trustee Reckler, can you hear now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Can you gentlemen hear? Good. You can hear, okay, you're good? Okay,
Okay.
all right, here we go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I just want to first say good evening to President Smith Folds and our trustees, Superintendent Hurst. and the CBOC chair and members, vice chair. This is my first CBOC meeting, so I really am excited to be able to present to you all tonight. I just want to share our recruitment efforts, per request, and what we've been doing to support the task to recruit 5 members. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Director Ford.
Sorry, you move closer, but your volume,
I don't know.
your volume went down.
I'm trying. Okay, I'm gonna try to keep the same level of volume. I apologize for that. So I wanted to start off by introducing and reintroducing myself. I am Rachel Forrest, the interim director of communications, and I have been in the district close to 10 years now. And I wanted to also introduce my team. We have a small but mighty team of 4. We actually have a project manager, Miss Kyra Brown, and Miss Mackenzie Martin. They've been in our communications team or on our team for about 8 months. And also Miss Olinda Terrero Diaz, our district receptionist. And so we are a team, again, of 4. We are working to strengthen and rebuild our communications tools and strategies. And so this is a great opportunity that we have been given to be able to use those tools and those strategies to support the recruitment efforts of the CBOC committee. Our next slide here, we're speaking to the communications tools and services, the official tools that the district has, and just a couple of numbers to share our reach. Again, this is a perfect opportunity for us because our team, we're researching and evaluating these tools right now to see where we can go moving forward with our future communications plan. So we do have Parent Square, which is one of our newest platforms and our main platform for the district, where we have about 99% reach for our community members, but our families and our staff. And also we have our newsletters that I wanted to lift up, our community newsletters that we utilize on a weekly basis to reach out to almost over 9,000 of our community members outside of the district. And so to move to the next slide, I just wanted to share what we have been doing so far or have done so far. And those tools that I mentioned before, we've used those tools to increase the vacancy awareness to families and staff through Parent Square, social media, again, our newsletters and our website. We've been partnering with our business services team and also our community engagement team to identify all of our business partners. We have about almost 250 business partners that we have reached out to via email just to spread that awareness for anyone who is interested in applying and joining the CBOC. And also, we've taken the opportunity, of course, to utilize our superintendent's efforts, his speaking engagements, to add an additional slide regarding the CBOC recruitment. So we have listed the number of speaking engagements, and that includes the El Cerrito City Council meeting, San Pablo City Council meeting, our city schools tour. That was amazing. It allowed us to be able to share with a lot of the city officials in the area of what we're doing in the district, and then also, again, get that recruitment promotion out there in as many phases as possible. And then also our education fair, where we partnered with Go Public Schools to really highlight all of our schools and our departments. But we also took an opportunity, our facilities team supported in tabling and sharing the recruitment and the vacancies for the CBOC committee. And lastly, on this slide, we are working with principals and utilizing our tools, our management bulletin, to encourage our principals to share with the school communities the vacancies that we have, and to identify any school or community members who would be a great fit for our CBOC committee. Okay. And so the next slide here is where we're going. We have, how could I say? We have committed to recruiting and promoting and identifying 5 members or new members by May 2024. So these are strategies and tactics that we will be implementing within the next couple of weeks to support the filling of these vacancies by May 2024. Okay, and some of those include really identifying the schools that are currently benefiting from the bond-funded projects. So that's Kennedy High School, Richmond High School, Shannon Elementary, Hercules Middle and High, and Steege and Lake. Really working with the principals to see if they have any members that would be a great fit for the CBOC committee. And then also reaching out to our parent and student groups, our PACs, the ELACs, or the Community Advisory Committee chairs, to see if they can support, to ask them to support us in recruiting as well. And another idea, which is, or strategy, which is really big for us, is now reaching out to the community groups that are in the area. So the Rotary clubs, city councils, and even the supervisor John Joya's office. And then lastly on the list is really taking advantage of the upcoming events that we have in the district. What's really huge for us right now, we have the Parents as Partners Conference that's coming up on Saturday at 9 a.m. and really tying it in, making it very similar to the education fair, where we take a table and we really push and offer this opportunity for our parents to learn more about the CBOC, and then to see if any community members who attend are really interested in becoming a member. So these strategies and tactics here, again, this is just what we're pushing out for the next couple of weeks so that we can reach our goal in May 2024. And lastly, we have this additional slide because this meeting that we're in currently, of course, is open to the public. It's recorded. This is an opportunity for us to recruit right now. So we are showing here in this slide the vacancies that we have available, and then also to encourage members or listeners and viewers to attend the next meeting on April 15th. Here is a link also that is available for anyone who wants to learn more about the CBOC, of course, and then also fill out an application if they would like to be a part. And then again, an additional promotion for the Parents as Partners Conference, which we're really lifting up. And we hope that this will be an opportunity for folks to learn more about the CBOC. And lastly, I mean, we couldn't be a communications department without promoting all of our platforms. So here we have our Instagram, or really all of our social platforms, but I really want to lift up our YouTube channel because this is a recorded meeting, but if anyone who is watching or viewing, they want to learn a little bit more about the CBOC, we have a section that is dedicated to the CBOC videos, and we're utilizing that piece to push out to the community so that if they want to learn more, they can also go to our channels, especially our YouTube channel, in order to learn more about the CBOC committee. And that is all I have for this presentation.
Thank you so very much, Director Forrest.
Thank
Okay,
you.
you're gonna go to 3 questions and then 2-minute comments. Does anyone have a question to start? Mr. Gosney, go ahead, please.
I have 2 questions, one after the other, or?
Yes, one after this.
All right. Sorry.
Yes, you're good, one after the other.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned you're reaching out to Supervisor Joya's office. Is there a reason why we're now also reaching out to Supervisor Glover, since he covers 70,000 adults?
There is no reason why not. I'm glad that you brought that up because we can note that and add it to our communication plan for sure.
Panola Hercules, or a different district. Second one is, I appreciate the fact you mentioned our next meeting, but do you know where it's going to be held?
I'm not sure where it's gonna be held. Is it at the FOC building?
Yes, it is, but the public doesn't know where it's at. They might think that it's here. That's
Oh, that is,
facility meeting. It's a facility building.
that is a great point. Thank you so much. We'll be sure to note that and update this.
Thank you. Anyone else have any other questions?
Yes.
Sorry, let's go, trustee Reckler and then to chairperson Hughes. Go ahead, trustee Reckler.
Thank you. So, you have 3 weeks to find 5 candidates. How many candidates do you have at this time?
How many candidates do we have at this time?
Yeah, it says that you have by May, so that's 3 weeks, roughly 22 days. 21 days, to find 5 candidates for the CBOC. So what is in the hopper now?
Well, I can say that through our outreach for the business partners, we did get a couple, or actually one person who applied. Unfortunately, she did not necessarily meet the requirements. So I would have to lean over to our facilities teams to see if we have any additional applicants. That is the only one that I know at the moment.
Earlier there are no.
No applicants at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I guess I'll save the rest for comment. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Hi.
You've got a very wide, broad, source here. We need specific towns.
Yeah.
How do you, last time we had one, we got a lot of people from the public that applied, but once they found out what we did, they weren't interested. So have you thought of making maybe a little video of showing Ellen going out to a site or things that they would be doing that we would be monitoring?
That is a great suggestion. No, we have not thought about videos, but we will definitely consider a video option. I would say, as far as specific needs, our team were talking about utilizing LinkedIn. Usually we use LinkedIn for human resources recruitment. Oh, I'm so sorry. For human resources recruitment, but we thought that this would be a great opportunity to also lift up our LinkedIn, where we can identify the folks who have certain skill sets or careers that would be conducive to this committee and maybe contribute greatly to this committee. So things like that, we're looking at maybe being a little bit more strategic about. And a video opportunity sounds like a great idea. We can probably lift that up within the next couple of weeks.
You could do like a 5-minute, and whoever goes anywhere, they could play the 5-minute and then talk. Second question is, when you want to hire a teacher, you don't go to YouTube and advertise. I don't mean you may, but we need a business organization representative. That we have not had that for a while.
Absolutely.
Have you considered going to the business organizations in the area? A lot of them like to have pro bono, as long as they don't work for the district. We could get them and advertise with them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, we have considered reaching out to the business partners in the area. We have sent emails to them. We do plan to do follow-up emails to those business partners, but we have close to about 250 business partners that we can continue to reach out to and ask for support and maybe interest. If not direct interest, someone they know probably could support the CBOC committee, would probably be interested.
And my third is, a lot of professional people, once they retire, they still love what they've done. And they would be interested maybe in using those, the talents that they have. How about, could you find out even from the businesses where if they have any retired people, that they could forward the information to?
That is a great idea. Absolutely. In our follow-up to the business partners, we'll be sure to include that for sure. That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
So thank you for making this, one-for plan. I hope that we can reach our goal by May 24. But what if we don't meet our goal? Is there any backup plan or?
That is a great question. Can I lift that for our facilities team? What if we don't reach our goal?
Well, I think the desire is that we want to continue recruiting. And we have to look at other means for recruitment. Ms. Flores has stated she's looking at other opportunities, so we hope that some of this bears new applicants, because we've been trying other forms in the past and haven't been successful. But I think we just have to look at other endeavors and how we might reach, much as Ms. Humes had said, other avenues to find people in the community that want to donate their time to meeting like this.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. So yes, I was saying, we're going to continue to look for new membership and explore other opportunities through other resources, much as Ms. Forrest had already stated. And then if that's not successful, we'll continue to look at other outreach and how we might be able to do that. And one is through the principals that we're going to try through the school sites themselves and through their PACs to see if we can't get some membership in that direction as well.
Okay, thank you. The second question, so on your, I'm supposed, this is your like marketing message,
Yeah.
right? And the membership application, can I ask where this link goes to? Can like CBOC member have access to?
Yes, that is a public link. It goes to the application to apply for the CBOC.
I know, but can we see the, like,
The application?
yes.
Let's see here.
No, I mean, can we see who applied?
Can you see the people who apply?
Oh, well, that's a great
It's a
question.
Google document as it comes through. Here's how it's generated, correct?
Yes, it does come to a spreadsheet and the notifications come to myself as well as Sylvia when a new applicant comes in.
Okay, so CBOC members do not have access to it.
We previously shared it with the president. or the
So
chairperson.
as the applicants come in, and we share that back out to the recruitment committee as they come in, so everybody sees it just as soon as we get it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the third question,
Mhm.
so on your plan, you plan to go to El Cerrito City Council meeting and San Pablo City Council meeting. Can we go to more city council meetings?
Yes, that is the goal, to reach out to the additional and look to see if there are any opportunities for upcoming city council meetings, so that we'll be able to share for sure. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, we're gonna do 2-minute comments. So we'll go around. Anyone have any comments? Mr. Gosling, hold on 1 second. Let's get the timer up and then we'll do 2-minute comments. First, do we have any public comment? Any public comment? Seeing none in the room. Any public comment on Zoom?
No public comment on this.
Okay. Board will do 2-minute public comment, CBOC board and WCC USD board. Mr. Gosling, you're up first.
Thank you, very ambitious. I appreciate what you're doing. As I pointed out forever, I've been to the bond program from the days when it was still a dream back in 1998. I've attended almost every CBOC meeting for the past 20 years. For more than 10 years, I served on the CBOC longer than any other person. I've chaired every subcommittee on the CBOC, chaired the CBOC for 3 years, have spoken at city council and neighborhood council meetings many dozens of times, have posted dozens of articles on social media, and have spoken to the board and the public about the bond program and the CBOC nearly 100 times. I've even tried, often with minimal success, to speak with board members about the bond program, to educate them, but also to warn them. Without a doubt, I think I can say I've done what I could to get the word out and to solicit membership on the CBOC. No matter what people might think, though, the public isn't dumb and they're more engaged than they're given credit for. They notice how, over the years, the board and staff have treated the CBOC and specific members as bastard stepchildren. how they've been ignored, how district vendors and public members and board members have publicly abused and mistreated members of the CBOC, even going so far as to suggest at one meeting that I was lying and they didn't like what I was warning them about. How the CBOC has been misled and even lied to, and even how the application process has been manipulated in such a way that it appears to many that the board and staff were and are trying to keep specific applicants from even being considered. They heard from board members went on record stating that the CBOC works for the board and how they will never accept a board policy that includes language that codifies the independence of the state mandated oversight body. The public is well aware of this and they keep this in mind. The very few times they hear about their efforts to get them to join the CBOC, only to be treated with less respect than they feel they deserve. This next paragraph is important. Also, something else that I've commented on many times, we have close to 250,000 adults living in West County. So why is the district then fixated on thinking that the universe is only comprised of the parents of current WCCUSD students? We all live in West County and most of us get to pay for these bonds for the next 40 to 60 years. So why is the vast majority excluded from notifications? Why does the district think that the only source of information is their website? I hear the proposed plans tonight, but considering the history of the district and reaching out to the public, why should I
Please
now have
conclude your
the
comments.
confidence and think that they'll actually listen to people who can help them? For instance, there are numerous online newspapers that would love to post notifications. I own one of them. I have never received a notification. As a matter of fact, even when I've solicited information for stories that would make the district look good, I met with initial offers to help and then silence. I could go on about this, but I'm sure that I'm already getting those looks. I should just sit down and shut up and be a good boy. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Godfrey. Anyone else have comments? Trustee Reckler, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So I think that raising the awareness through social media is good and Parent Square and HR and all of those other things. But having tried to recruit for this committee for many, many, many years, this is high maintenance, high contact, hand holding, direct communication. Like I know your skill set. I know you're going to be a value. You personally, I know you personally, and I want you to abide is very much the kind of recruiting that has to happen for this. And I have been out to all of these groups. I've been to the El Cerrito Chamber. I've been to the El Cerrito Democratic Club. I've been to the Richmond Rotary. I've been to the El Cerrito Rotary. I have personally gone out and made contacts. And I think everybody here can do that, including the CBOC. I mean, if you read the law, it's supposed to be the board or the district's responsibility to do this, but I think that you're the best recruiter and you're the best recruiter and you're the best recruiter because you understand this field. And so that is the way that I would consider doing that. And then I'll talk about this later, but I love Ms. Humes and the way that she really tried to educate her members to keep them in and understanding what was going on and teach them about the CBOC. And that I think is a really important piece of recruiting and retaining members. And with that, I'm complete. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments? I know, Ms. Humes, you have a statement from President Brandon.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. This was an email that Chairperson Brandon Havenar thought and sent me and asked me to read it, and it pertains to recruiting. And it is my opinion that people serving on CBOC are the single most important attribute of the committee. If we do not have volunteer oversight committee members, we fail to have formal bond oversight conducted at all. We experienced this recently and we can't let it happen again. For this reason, as chair of the CBOC, it is my priority to onboard our seventh and last required member of this committee as soon as possible. Furthermore, I invite the school board and district staff to partner with our committee to bring our membership up to the maximum 11 members before the end of the calendar year. Achieving this goal will position the CBOC for sustainability and success in carrying out our duties over the long term. Thank you for your partnership and dedication to bringing our CBOC into compliance with regard to our membership numbers. In community, Brendan Havenar.
Thank you so much. Ms. Humes, do you have any comments? Chairperson Humes, do you have any comments?
Yes, I would just like to encourage you to lean heavily on your business service department. Because it seems like you're going to all resources in the committee, in the community, hoping you might get somebody with some skill that could be on there. Why not go to the people with the skill and hope they're in the community? And in the business thing, I don't think we have, because it's hard to get, I don't think we have to have somebody that lives in the committee. They just can't work for you.
Trustee Phillips, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. So the board trustees used to have appointments to the CBOC. And I understand that there are some people who thought that that was a conflict of interest. But it seems to me that since this has been eliminated, the CBOC consistently doesn't have the members that it needs. And people continue to come to the board, the CBOC, and say, help us get members. I think that this is a case of people trying to have it both ways. You either want the board to bring people or you don't. Currently, people say that they don't. But I've heard, since we've been here multiple times, I think I'm hearing people say they want the board to help. The board used to appoint people. Look, I don't know how long I'm gonna be on this board anyway, so this is not about me getting an appointment. This is just simply saying, if you want the board to make sure or help or whatever you wanna call it, bring the CBOC to capacity, give the appointments back. Now, obviously, the CBOC can't give anything to the board. The board would have to take that step on its own, right? So the board could say, you know what, we're gonna do what we used to do, and each board member is gonna get an appointment to the CBOC. If you do that, I think the problem will be resolved. If you don't, that's up to you. But I don't know how people can blame the board when the board doesn't have appointments anymore and people say that they don't want the board to have. Maybe I'm just getting crotchety at home. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else have any comment? I have a comment. Thank you so much for your presentation, Director Forrest. It was really, really good. Hearing what everyone said, here's my suggestion. One of my suggestions is a one-pager with skills listed about what it takes to be a CBOC member with longevity. Then if that could go out to Trustee Reckler's point about the board doing a little bit of the legwork, we all have social media. We all have ways of being able to talk about the CBOC, but if we do it all with one voice, this is the skills that we need, this is what we're looking for, this is what it takes. Do you have, you know, the time to do one meeting a month? Do you have the time to do site visits? Do you have, so whatever those skills are, and I'm assuming that would be working with CBOC chairperson and with the district staff to come up with that short list of skills. Nothing that's going to be overwhelming because you don't want to scare people. And with a YouTube link, and with this is who you can contact to find out more, and with here's our calendar of next meetings that you can go to. I think that it's gonna take a effort on everybody's part. I did not know the board used to appoint people. That's something I just didn't have that historical knowledge of. But I think it's gonna take a combined effort on everybody's part to get and keep, not just get, but get and keep active, productive, sustainable CBOC members. So I am complete, but thank you so much for the presentation, staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I first introduce Mr. Phillips? Mr. Phillips, you were saying that if we want your help, we've got a suggestion is to have you appoint people. We're talking about the law here. This isn't a please help us type thing. In the law, it states that you are to provide, the board is to provide members for the CBOC. And secondly, what's the difference if you know John Miller and you would like to appoint John Miller? Well, tell John Miller to sign up. And we can evaluate it on an objective basis. There's nothing holding you back. So instead of saying, you have to bring someone, you have to, accept, appoint somebody, ask them to apply.
I think realistically, like that sounds great, but I think realistically, there's a big difference for many volunteers to say that I am being asked by a board member. Like, for example, there was a conversation earlier about Supervisor Joya. All of those people that Supervisor Joya gets to serve on these different committees for the county, those are all his direct appointments. He's not asking people to just go and volunteer and then go get evaluated by some group of people. What he's doing is saying, hey, there is a position open on committee X. And and his staff, and they recruit for it, and they go to people and they say, I think you, Ms. Humes, would be great on this committee, and I am going to appoint you. When he decides who he wants to appoint, I am going to appoint you to committee X. I know, that's how I served on the first 5 commission. And I know a lot of people don't think very highly of the board or individual trustees, but it does make a difference when an elected official comes to you and says, there is an appointment that I have, and I would like to appoint you to this position. Whether people believe it or not, it carries more weight for many people when an elected official says that to them. That is what used to happen here. It no longer happens, right? And so I get that the district is supposed to help bring folks to the CBOC. But it's like, what I'm hearing is, well, you can't have an appointment, but go recruit people and then we'll evaluate who you want. That's fine, but it's not working. And it hasn't worked for years. But what did work was when board members actually had individual appointments. And we don't have to go back to that. Like I said, I don't even know how long I'm gonna be on the board. But what I am saying is what we are currently doing, if we continue to do it, the CBOC will continue to lack the membership that it's supposed to have. So one option is for the board to take it upon itself to give its appointment power back or not. But if we don't, we keep having the same conversation year after year after year.
Anyone
May I
else?
offer clarification? Individual board members never had the option of appointing. They nominated for consideration by the full board. It went a full interview process and went before the public before a vote was taken. They were not allowed to appoint anybody at all. All they could do was nominate them. I did that twice when I got out there. Never had an appointment.
If I may, I think that's a semantic, to be frank. I know that as an individual board member, I'm not just gonna say it's gonna be this person. It would be the board agreeing. And so, yes, that's true.
Any other comments? Any other conversation to this? Thank you. This is a good conversation. This is a good conversation. Any other conversation? No? Okay, we're gonna move on to B2. B2 is the implementation plan update. Ms. Payne, this is your item.
Thank you. I'm going to transition, so if you'll give me just a second. We're gonna try it without power. We'll see how long that lasts. It's okay, that's a different charge cord.
Ms. Payne, let me just do a check of hearing. Mr. Gosling, can you hear? Ms.
Yes.
Payne, say a couple of things.
She hasn't said anything yet.
Just say a couple of things. Say hi.
Good evening.
When you point your face at me, yeah.
Trustee Reckler, you can hear? Okay, sir, you can hear? Thank you. Trustee Christian, you good?
Yes.
Yeah, you good? Yes. Chairperson, you good? Okay, Mr. Phillips, you can hear? Okay, all right, we're ready.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa Payne. I'm the Executive Director of Contracts Administration for the district. It's my pleasure tonight to present to all of you an update on the implementation plan across all of the audits for the bond program. And so in tonight's presentation, there's 4 things that we have on the agenda. The first item is we're going to review the annual bond audit. So we have 2 audits that we do annually, one financial, one performance. Then we're going to transition to the supplemental audits. Then we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we're facing and how we see opportunities in all of those. And then we are going to conclude the presentation with actionable commitments about how we hope to move forward together. And so first, for our annual audits, happy audit season. Every year we're back. So as part of our board policy, we have a commitment that the draft financial and performance audit for the bond program are reviewed concurrently by staff and the CBOC. So the statutory deadline for this audit was March 31st. We asked for an extension to ensure that the draft would be able to be reviewed by both the CBOC and staff. So at this time, the draft audits have been provided to the CBOC and staff, and we're concurrently reviewing those now. In addition to the annual audits, we have a number of supplemental audits, and that would be the forensic accounting investigation, which looked at a time period of 2008 to 2016. And then there was the program effectiveness audit, which looked at 2017 to 2019. Following those 2 supplemental audits, the board did approve for a third-party auditor to do a review of the implementation of those audits. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. One of the things I want to highlight in the presentations is so much of this information is available on our district website. And so we have provided links down here where you can go to find the historical audits on the district website and on the CBOC website. So first, for our annual audits, the first one that we're going to talk about tonight is our financial audit. Our auditor is Christy White, and the time period is July of 22 to June 30 of 23. So one of the first things I always try to do when I look at an audit is get into my time machine so that I can focus on what is the time period of this audit, because that is a critical feature and something that can cause some confusion. The annual audits are looking at 3 different bond measures because those are the bond measures for which there were expenditures during that audit time period. So the financial audit, again, we've received the draft. We invite all of you to join us next Monday at the Facilities Operations Center at 1400 Marina Way South in Richmond for our monthly CBOC meeting, where the auditors will be there in attendance to present the audit and answer any questions that anyone has about the draft audit. After that partnership and that meeting and review, the auditors will finalize the audit, and then we'll bring that audit back to the board for the board to receive and then answer any questions at that time as well. Very similar for the performance audit. So the financial audit looks at financial statements. The performance audit is looking to ensure that the expenditures for the bond program are in accordance with the laws. So they're checking to make sure that proceeds were used on the projects listed on the ballot. No bond dollars were spent on administrative salaries. And so again, we'll be reviewing it at next week's CBOC meeting. The drafts are currently available, and we really encourage you to join us at that meeting. So now we're going to transition from the annual audits to the supplemental audits. And so we're gonna start with the forensic accounting investigation, just kind of referred to as the FAI. So there's a couple of people that may not know the full history of the forensic accounting investigation, so I wanted to provide a little bit of background. So in August of 2015, there was an employee of the district that delivered documents to the board with several allegations regarding the bond program. The board acted very swiftly, approved a contract with a third-party auditor to do a risk assessment, and that was phase one. Based on that risk assessment, a subcommittee was formed, and the board subsequently in January of 2016 approved an audit to review those allegations. And then a report was delivered to the board in September of 2016. So that report made 112 recommendations. And that report did two things. So it looked back 8 years at what they called the forensic investigation. And then it looked back 2 years and did a testing of controls. Because one of the things that's critical when you're looking at the procedures and processes of a district is you want to understand what are the internal controls that are in place, and then you want to test them to see how they're being implemented. One of the key recommendations of that audit was the very last one, and that was the creation of an implementation task force. Again, I've provided the link here to the historical information on our website. So the task force was created as a partnering committee made up of some very specific roles and teams to really work together to develop how we were going to implement these recommendations. How are we going to demonstrate the implementation of the recommendations? And you can see here some of the key roles and positions. The implementation task force is under the leadership of the superintendent. And we met just, as Lorraine mentioned, we met back in February. And so part of the board's commitment to ensuring the implementation of these recommendations was contracting with third-party auditing firms to come in and review the verification of implementation. And so it started out as 2 phases, and the contract with Moss Adams had a phase 1, and phase 1 looked at 62 of the 112 recommendations. And based on that, they created 4 different statuses. So they said, okay, we've deemed it implemented. They said, okay, we deem this partially implemented, meaning we see some of what you're doing, but we'd also like to see this as well. They deemed a couple of recommendations as not implemented. And then there were a couple of recommendations that were deemed undetermined. So one of the key things on this slide is that very last column when we talk about what is the audit period. So when Moss Adams did phase 1, they looked at, did the district implement this by June 30 of 2017? So you can see this phase 1 took place kind of right after the forensic accounting investigation came out. Phase 2, Moss Adams was asked to look at the balance. So you had 112 recommendations. They were charged with then looking at the 50 that remained. And they looked at them through a period of September 30 of 2021, right? That's when I said time machine, right? So when you're looking at an audit, sometimes you have to think about what was the composition of the district in September of 2021. We've had some change in leadership since that time. The implementation of the recommendations is happening every single day. And so we have a remaining phase, and that is phase 1.5. And this is the review of the recommendations that Moss Adams did not deem as implemented in phase 1. Plus, there were 26 recommendations from an effectiveness audit. So those were the years of 2017 to 2019. And those are the recommendations that ID Bailey is reviewing now. So that's where we are. That is the status. And now we really want to highlight what we see as some challenges and more importantly, some opportunities. So some of the challenges that we have faced in demonstrating implementation are staffing and resources. So the staffing for the bond program has changed significantly over the years and kind of continues to evolve. We're living in a post-pandemic environment, and we are finding that recruiting the staffing that we've had historically to be extremely problematic. We've just struggled to do it, but we have some ideas. One of the other challenges is implementing the intent of an outdated recommendation. So what I mean by that is the forensic auditors were very specific. So there's a number of recommendations that say, implement this in this very specific system, Primavera. Well, Primavera is the system that we were using, right? Time machine, 2008 to 2016. It's not the system that we use now. So part of it is working with the implementation task force and working with the auditors to determine how do we demonstrate that we're implementing the intent of the recommendation? Because the intent was good, but we can't on its surface just do what the recommendation says because that position doesn't exist. We're not using that software anymore, et cetera. One of the other challenges has been, how do we demonstrate the new thing that we're doing? And so there's been a number of recommendations that the third-party auditor has said, this is not implemented. And they said it's not implemented because the work that we're doing today wasn't done by that date that was set as the completion date. So they've said, hey, great, you showed us what you're doing now, can't give you any credit for it. But it seems like you're on the right track. And that's why we do have the additional phase 1.5 happening now. And lastly, and I think what is most important is until we can demonstrate the implementation of these recommendations, I think our ability to continue to build and have trust with our community is challenged. These recommendations are from many, many years ago. And despite the work that we do every day, it's important that we complete this work. And we heard that earlier today. So how do we take these challenges? How do we take where we are and how do we move forward? So one of the things we talked about at the implementation task force committee meeting was we're looking at a framework. And we're borrowing it from the International Partnering Institute. It's called the Momentum System, and it's got 4 steps. And so that's where we see the opportunity. And so 4 steps: get aligned, create a forum for co-creation, implement one initiative at a time, measure and monitor results. And now I'd like to share with you what we think that looks like specific to our bond program. So the very first step, you got to get aligned. So one of the first big initiatives that we did was we spent about 2 years in partnership together developing the bond program management plan. 300 pages of how we do the work we do, the form we use, the flow chart for it, who does the work, what do the approvals look like? And that was a major initiative. And that actually represents more than 65% of the recommendations, and their implementation is documented in that procedure. But we've got to do more. So we've got to find a way to align with the existing and available staff we have today to do the work that the community expects and deserves. And the way that we're looking to do that is with technology. And that's why I have that third piece here. And there's something really exciting we'd like to share with you a little bit later in today's meeting. So the next item, right? The next pillar in this system is about creating forums for co-creation. So our success in implementing this recommendations won't happen from one place. It's going to take cross-departmental support, integration, and commitment in order to properly implement these recommendations so that the implementation is ongoing and sustainable and isn't relying on a person but it really is about a system and how a system works. And so we really see the implementation task force as that partnering, co-creating and innovating group. So the next piece is one initiative at a time. So we talked about the bond program or the bond program management plan. That was a big one. We still have that. The one that we'll be previewing tonight is converting a series of very manual, labor-intensive and staff-dependent financial reports into an automated system, which means anyone with a couple of clicks of a button can go to the internet and will be able to pull a project-specific or a 25-year program financial report with live data at any time. And I have a demo of that tonight. And so this is really one of our second big initiatives that we've been working on for quite some time. We haven't been able to fill the financial reporting positions that stood vacant for almost 2 years, but we've really invested and partnered with some technologies so that we can deliver and actually exceed what we were previously able to deliver. And the last piece is we have to continue to measure and monitor the results. And we really see that in the work that we do with the CBOC every month. We see that in the work that we're going to be doing with the implementation task force. And we see that in the program management plan. If we're saying that we're going to do it, then we should be doing it no matter who's in the position. And we should ensure that as we're investing on trying to make these improvements, that they're sustainable and ongoing. We can't check a recommendation implemented and then 2 years later, we're not doing that anymore. We have to make sure that we're continuing to implement these recommendations. So most importantly, when we met and had agenda setting for this meeting, one of the things that came across very clear from the CBOC chair was, we want to know what you're going to do, but more specifically, we're looking for a commitment. Who, when, and how. Make it actionable, make it real. And I am here representing our entire team to tell you that we want to do those things. And these are the commitments that we have very specific to these recommendations tonight. So the first piece is our annual audits that we talked about. So in alignment with our board policy, the draft reports are being reviewed by CBOC members and staff concurrently right now. Auditors have confirmed they're attending the CBOC meeting next Monday, where we will review those draft reports together. And then that review and dialogue and discussion and recommendation will take place before the audit is made final. So that then when we have that final report and come forward to the board, which we anticipate doing in May, you will know as board members that that is coming to you on behalf of staff and the CBOC. Second, actionable commitments, and this is a really big one. The verification of recommendation implementation. There's kind of 3 major components. There's actually 4, but I had 1 slide, so I put 2 in the first one. So the first one, implementation and the PMP. You have to do the work every day. You have to implement the control. You have to follow the process. You have to use the form. It has to be properly approved, right? You have to implement the recommendation, but then you have to demonstrate how you're implementing it. So every day we have to do the work, but then we have to demonstrate how in our program management plan, which are the written procedures that we provide to every auditing firm when they walk in the door and they say, how do you do your work? And we say it's a really big file. It's on our website. It's about 300 pages, but it's all in there. And then they say, okay, great. You said this is the form you use for every single contract we've pulled. Send me that form. Second, so that's work that we do every day. And we're working on an update to the PMP right now. Second piece is the implementation task force. So under the leadership of our superintendent, We have made the commitment that we will be meeting on a quarterly basis. We met in February and we're going to keep that momentum that you spoke about. We will be meeting quarterly because each one of us on the task force, we have a series of responsibilities and recommendations that we're trying to implement, and we need to be bringing that back. Sometimes when you implement something, you have the very best of intentions and you say, here's how I'm going to fix it. And maybe you fix some of it, but maybe now you've uncovered another problem, another barrier. So we have to continue with that work. And so while the location may vary, through superintendent's leadership, we will be doing that work together quarterly. Lastly, bringing forward the third-party auditor reports, which will be the verification of implementation to the board. And we talked a lot about this. We wanted to set a real deadline. When are we going to do it? But we also couldn't set something that we knew we couldn't make. And so knowing that we're on the eve of the end of the fiscal year, we're on the eve of the close of our financial system, we are making the commitment to bring the phase 1.5 and 2.0 reports to the board by September 30 of this year. And so with that, I do want to say, before I open it up for questions, that this presentation tonight, I just get the pleasure of presenting it. So this represents the work of the team. This represents what we hear from our CBOC partners. It also represents what we hear from the board. And so what we want you to know is we hear you and we value what you say, and we're trying to implement that in the work that we're doing, but we need that feedback. And so we want to thank you for your partnership. None of this is possible if we're not working together. And then I just want to open it up or turn it back over to the.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the presentation. It was well done. Board, we have 3 questions for the first round, 2-minute comment. We're gonna go Mr. Gosling, then Trustee Phillips. Go ahead.
Thank you. First off, thank you very much for the presentation. She's superstar, always great presentations. That's great. But I got a question for you. And that's on Monday night, the CBOC will be reviewing these. We'll be speaking with the auditors. But if the CBOC requests an amendment to an audit or asks for specific information to be included, will this actually happen? And I mentioned this only because in my come with 25 years on the CBOC, I've never seen the draft change or it becomes a final, no matter what we ask for.
So it's a great question. And here's how I understand these audit reports have to meet a very specific standard established through the state and through GAGAS, the Government Accounting Guide. The auditor is coming to the meeting next week. They understand the board's policy and therefore the board's direction. They understand this district's commitment that the CBOCs are partner in the review, but it's their name that goes on that report. And it's ultimately their license registration as an auditor that they have to stand behind that report. So they are coming to the meeting with an open mind to hear all of the recommendations, questions, inquiries. But we as district staff, the board, CBOC members, community don't have the ability to force the auditor to change it because this is their professional work. And so I cannot guarantee that a recommendation that is made will be made in the audit, but what I can guarantee is that very specific conversations were had with the auditors. They understood that these reports couldn't be final and that they were draft. And they are coming to this meeting with an open mind and an open ear.
That did not reassure me because they said, I've never seen them make a change, ever. And that's disappointing because the CBOC is the one going out to the public saying, look what we've done for you. We've provided an audit. We don't stand behind this audit, but this is the audit.
Well, and I do appreciate that. And I think that that's really critical. One of the things that can be a challenge is everybody has a different role to play and a different responsibility. So the auditor has a very specific responsibility and very specific standards that they have to follow in publishing the report. The CBOC also has an absolutely critical role, and to echo the comments that were shared on behalf of the chairperson, CBOC members are the most critical part of the CBOC. And that's why one of the fundamental responsibilities of the CBOC is to publish the annual report. And it is in that annual report that the staff and the board and the auditor don't get to tell the CBOC what to say or not say in their report. And so if there were concerns about the audit, I would say that it's the CBOC's annual report, which would be the vehicle for which the CBOC to express their review to the community. And so honoring the auditor's role and honoring the CBOC's role, I would say both have a different vehicle to express what they think is their responsibility to provide.
Trustee Phillips?
Hello.
Hi.
For the period of time, the period of time complained about by that district employee, did multiple public agencies investigate the activities of this district?
Yes.
Did any public agency find that this district did anything illegal?
I'm not aware of anything.
We're gonna have comments, right? The board that was in place when these recommendations came down, they voted to approve the implementation of all of these recommendations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's
Trustee Record, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the presentation. I'd like to start on page 10, which is to catch me up on this third-party verification of implementation. So on phases 1 and 2, you have this chart of implementation, et cetera. What was the ranking of what was implemented? Was it done like hair on fire first down to easiest, or was it, we can pop this off in a second, so we're gonna do this one first? Can you talk about that process in?
Absolutely. So the organization of the forensic accounting audit was very structured. And so there were very specific areas that were reviewed. And so when you look at both the testing of controls, which was a 2-year period, and the forensic, which went back the 8 years, you could argue that a number of the recommendations almost cascaded. So the recommendation for a particular section -1 would say, implement this, -2, implement that, maybe -5. Now write a procedure for items 1 through 4, and then -6 would say, now audit to verify that the district is implementing those recommendations. So I may not have said that very clearly, but part of the challenge of implementing some of these recommendations is they're not all independent, and many of them are dependent and almost cascading upon one another. There are also some recommendations that may never, depending on the approval of the board, be implemented. And here's why. I believe there's about 7 recommendations that were made in that audit of the 112 that say the board should investigate this, right? And those things happened in closed session. And so for a third-party auditor to come in and verify that those recommendations were implemented, they've said, well, we would need to know what happened in closed session. And that's kind of what led to this 4th category of like undetermined, where the auditor has said, we see that there's a recommendation, we understand the intent of the recommendation, but we as a third-party auditor cannot determine that this was implemented.
A small comment on that is, I'm not an attorney, but there are ways that the board can waive their attorney-client privilege depending on how sensitive they are with, all right, so I understand that. So what I'm trying to get to right here in 10 is for phases 1 and 2. So like, are you stuck now? Like, are you like, okay, we've done? No.
No, definitely not. So phase 2 took us through September 30th, 21. So it's almost like in phase 2, you got credit for the work that was done through September 30th, 21. And so there are a number of things that we've implemented since September 30th, 21 that are under review in the phase 1.5. Does that, I feel like I didn't answer your question.
Yeah, so basically, just to summarize, the way this was implemented was, there were many parts. Something might have been important, but there were several other things that might not have been, but because we were working on this, it all got swept into working on this one particular thing, correct?
Yes.
Basically.
Mhm.
We'll say the suite. Okay, and then you're gonna come back in and by September 30th through this 1.5, you're gonna figure out where you are with phases 1 and 2 and figure out how to keep going. Is that?
Absolutely. Because part of an audit, so there's multiple components to an audit. And so typically in an audit, the auditor makes a recommendation and then there's a management response. And so I see that management response is really the district's response to the auditor said, you've partially implemented this and we see that here, but we also want to see this. And so then what will come forward to the board when you see that reports is management's response saying, yes, we implemented that through that date. And since then, we've incorporated that into the PMP. Since that, we've implemented the online reporting module, thereby implementing the intent of the recommendation. So as a board, you'll receive both the auditor's status as well as the district's response and anticipated completion date for how we plan to complete that implementation.
Okay, so I think I'm probably done for now, but I do have more if there's another round.
Anyone on this side have any questions? Go ahead, both of you, well, not at the same time.
No, it's actually a follow-up question of transgraduate question. It's also for the verification implementation. So in the report, the third-party agencies report, is there any like impact analysis? For example, different recommendations have different impact, right? Some recommendations have more like financial materiality, some are not. So and you have some recommendations that are implemented, some are not. So what are the impacts?
So for a number of the recommendations in the report, I would say about half, the auditor provided a risk assessment of low, medium, or high. So what they were saying was based on what we have observed, right, through our review and based on what we understand, how important, right, what is the risk for this audit, they assigned a level, high, medium, or low. And so when we bring that information forward and in the historical information available online, that risk assessment belongs to certain recommendations. Not all of them have one, some of them do.
How to define high risk, medium risk, and low risk? Is it based on the impact or based on the possibility of?
So I didn't draft it, but hopefully I'm representing the auditors to the best of my ability. From what I read in their report was that was basically their assessment of the risk level. So if there was a high risk for potential fraud or misreporting, was this a low risk item or a medium risk item? And the forensic accounting investigation is 2 very large notebooks on my desk. And so there's a lot of detail and we go back a lot to look at very specifically the write-up and the language that was included in that 2016 forensic accounting investigation to really understand what was the observation of the auditor and what was the concern. so that we could understand what is the intent of their recommendation, because we may not be able to implement this specific recommendation because we don't use that system anymore. But if the concern in the audit was, for example, there's one recommendation that says this position should cross-train this position. And so we read the intent of that recommendation to say that you've got to have duplicity for certain services so that you always have a continuum in that service. Well, neither one of those positions currently exist. And so we don't have a person in either one of those positions at this time. But we still need to implement the intent of the recommendation because the intent is good. And what it is saying is that you have to continue to have that reconciliation. And so who is doing it is maybe not as important as, is it being done? And is there proper procedures in place to ensure that if someone is absent or if someone retires, that that work continues? And so that's been some of the challenge as we have gone through an audit cycle and received recommendation from a third party that says, you got to do better, do more. Then we've implemented something else, but then we need another auditor to come in and see what is the next thing that we did. And is the next thing that we did enough to demonstrate the implementation of the intent?
Thank you for the explanation.
Hi.
Can we speak up at that end, please?
Okay, I have two questions on the FAI, and one on the general. I looked at your chart here, but firstly, excuse me. I changed the percentages in the numbers. I feel better with numbers. And it seems to me that the first audit that Ross Adams did in 2017, there were 62 items that the district said were implemented. He found 33 that they agreed were implemented, and 29 that were not. They might be partially, but they weren't implemented completely. And that's where you get the 29 in Bailey's audit 125. And then, since there were 112 total recommendations, the 50, the number 2 is the remainder of the recommendations that nobody looked at. Dealing with. As of September 2021, only 54 implementations of the 83 from Ross Adams have been implemented. How does that look now?
So I think what would be best, because I really do want to address your question, but I think the best way to look at implementation, we can definitely convert this into the numbers, but I think you have to talk about what the recommendation is. So for example, you could have a recommendation, and we do have one that's outstanding, which is a new policy. And so the ability to bring forward a policy that aligns with the auditor's recommendation is something that would require time and a lot of people, and that's something that we're looking at. There could be another recommendation that Moss Adams looked at, and this is a common example where they said, the LS said, you need a form. And so we said, we have a form, and the form does what we understood you wanted us to do. And they said it's partially implemented, the form needs a date. And so subsequent to that, we've added a date. So I would say that's one of the easier recommendations, right? We immediately put a date on it, but it needs to be re-reviewed for implementation versus drafting and bringing forward a policy that would be approved and move forward. That's going to be a harder recommendation. And so what I would like to do to best answer your question is bring a more comprehensive presentation of that forward so that we could talk about the counts and the specific numbers. We could focus on the risk assessment level, which I think speaks to 2 of the things that I heard tonight, right? Like, how do you prioritize and how do you achieve it? And then we could say, hey, here's kind of a bundle of the ones where the auditor said, we see you did this, do this too. Did we do the next thing? And here are the ones where they're saying, we didn't see that you did it by this date, but we see you've done it after that. And here are the ones that we need to work together to figure out how we're gonna implement, because I will be honest, there's a couple that I would argue are a little bit stuck. So how are we, as the current management and administration, gonna move that recommendation forward? And so I think to best answer your question, I think we should do a more comprehensive presentation on it.
And in that, I sent you that email today, and you didn't have time to deal with it, but in it, it went back to the original, investigation, the BLS. And it actually stated that there were 21 high risk of the 112, 21 high risk items, 58 medium, 2 low. I would like to know what has happened with the high risk. In the report of 2021, it had the TC, the to be tested. And there were, I think, that 5 high-risk elements there. I know 2 of them have not been implemented. So I'd like to get a picture, because that's the most serious of where, maybe in the report that you've given, talk to us about that.
Absolutely. So maybe what we could do is prepare kind of a board memo, as well as bring it to the CBOC and specifically address that question of the high risk items and provide the statistics very specifically to those recommendations.
Great, great. And my final question is, I noticed that the audit report are late again this year. That by law, they're supposed to be, by the report, not the draft, it's supposed to be there by the 31st of March. What happened this year?
So I'm nothing but honest, so I'm just going to tell you the truth. So, a year ago, we said that due to staffing issues and challenges, we provided documents late to the auditor. That answer is still true. So we weren't able to provide everything to the auditor in February, and so it's caused the delay. They did receive everything in March, but it wasn't enough time to finalize the report. So what we did was we are committed to ensuring that we look at it together. And so we spoke to both auditors, Heidi Bailey as well as Christy White, and we asked for an extension. And in part of asking for an extension, we said, is there a penalty associated with asking for an extension? They said no. Is there a consequence of asking for the extension? They said no. And then we asked if they would be willing to have a draft report. And so the annual bond performance and the annual bond financial audits, those are required and we'll have those every year. But they're also tied to the district-wide financial audit as well. And so that audit also has an extension. And so you can't completely segregate them. All I can do is tell you that we're continuing to try to come up with ways to do it better. Part of our work with the Colby system, which I'll share a little bit more in the next presentation. I know we're getting a little tight on time. I'm a talker, sorry. We're working with Colby and accounting, accountability to try to take some of the work that is staff intensive and transition it into this reporting module. And that extends to our audit work too. So some of the things that were hard to produce this year for the audit, we've worked to account with accountability to say for next year's audit, they're going to ask for the same thing. So we need to collect this data. We need to have this data when we get to June 30, right around the corner, because that's our audit cutoff period. We need to produce those reports then. So then when the auditors ask for it, we already have the data they're asking us for. So this was my first year being as involved as I was in the financial audit, because we don't have anyone in the financial position for the bond program. At this time, it still stands vacant. And so I have learned a lot this year. And so we didn't hit the date. And we weren't okay with asking the auditors to make the report final, which is why we asked for the extension to ensure that we could review the drafts together.
I have another question about the section.
Board, while you think of your questions for the second round, I'm just gonna confer with the chairperson so we can think about a time extension. We still have one more presentation. CBOC and board, we would like to extend the time to 8:45 so we can get in the second round of questions, comments, in the next presentation, questions and comments. Do I have a motion to extend the meeting until 8:45?
So moved.
Is there a second? You have a question, trustee Phillips?
I think that this is a board vote. I mean, I'll vote to do it. But I don't think that we actually have joint votes. That's my thought. I don't believe we do, and I've never.
No,
actually-
we have the form for board to vote. Yeah, we have a form for the board to vote, but it is a joint meeting because that's an action that we're taking, right? What we're doing now is we're trying to determine, because it's a joint meeting, the attorney, we were talking about quorum earlier, trustee Phillips, and the attorney said because we're not taking action, we don't have to have a CBOC quorum, but we had a board quorum, right? So we were okay to continue. It wasn't necessary to have any quorum because we were, well, board quorum to have a meeting, but not a CBOC quorum. We're now trying to figure out, to your point, because we're taking action, because we would have to vote. Is it just the board vote, because there's three of us, which constitutes a meeting, or do we have to include the CBOC part of the vote because it's a joint meeting? So that's what he's asking now. Trustee Reckler?
So point of order, I'll save us some attorney money, and if both boards vote, then we could continue.
Even without a quorum with CBOC?
Oh, they don't have quorum.
They don't have quorum, that's the issue, because we're taking action, they don't have quorum. So if the board, if this is just deemed a board meeting with the CBOC present, that makes a difference than if it's a joint meeting and because they're a Brown Act committee and we're a Brown Act committee, according to what the attorney said.
Our board can, since we have.
So we can take a vote to extend that action, to extend the meeting just with our board members. Okay. Sir.
I hope he didn't charge me for what I just told you. But
Probably, yeah.
We're gonna vote no. We're gonna vote no. We'll ask if that's just like a vote.
Just a point of clarification, where does it say where we're supposed to hit?
At the very, if you look at the bottom of the agenda.
The agenda there or the agenda online that the church to put out in the public?
I'm not, did the agenda.
Because I can't find it
here
anywhere.
And there say adjournment at 8:15. And this is the
I'm
agenda that
sorry,
we did.
it
does?
it does.
Okay,
I
all right, so,
click a couple places.
so Mr. Phillips or trustee Reckler, would you like to make a motion for an extension to 8:45? Trustee Phillips?
I move that we extend the meeting to 8. That's what you want.
Yes, sir.
I move that we extend to 8:45.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Reckler will second.
Thank you. We're gonna go to the vote. Trustee Phillips?
Yes.
Trustee Reckler?
Reckler, yes.
And Smith Folds is a yes. Thank you very much. We are now extending to 8:45. We're on our second round of questions for this presentation. Yes?
Sorry, it actually says the meeting will adjourn at 10:30.
Wow. Okay, well then we should be good. Okay, so, we're on our second round of questions. I see trustee Reckler has another question. I know Chairperson Humes had another question. Anyone else have another question? Okay, trustee Reckler, go ahead.
So, as I understand it, this forum for co-creation is meeting? in
Yes.
February, and what is the composition of that? Group?
So the current composition, there are a couple of vacancies, based on the positions that were identified. So superintendent, associate superintendent of operations for the bond program, our associate superintendent of business services, our CBO, Ms. Moses, myself. We do not currently have a representative from the CBOC. We're working with the Associate Superintendent of HR for a solutions team member, and we currently don't have an internal auditor.
Yeah, so I think out of all these people, I mean, if you don't have an internal auditor or some sort of audit function, who's performing that?
So the verification of implementation, sometimes it's the third-party auditor that's doing it. So, I'm sorry, I don't think I completely understand the question. I don't feel like I answered it. Okay.
Trustee Reckler, do you have any other questions?
Okay, I think the rest is just comments. I think that's it.
Okay, Chairperson Hughes?
Yes, I found a couple of years ago that, there was a education code dealing with how long a specific auditor companies
Mhm.
partner can do an audit.
Mhm.
And it turned out that one of the partners can only do it for 6 consecutive years.
Mhm.
Now, Christy White we've had it for several years done. At the last, audit, the 23 audit, or the 22 audit, I'm sorry. Mr. Ash said that he had done it for 5 years. So this year's, if he does it this year, it'll be 6th year. So I don't know how many partners they have or whatever. There's no documentation that I know of that, now we just learned about this. But I think maybe you could go back and ask Christy White to list on this date, who was the partner that wrote the order. They don't like to write it in the report. All they write off is Christy White. And so I think we should have some data so that we make sure we follow this. And I've given you the edge that I have here if you want it, and I've told the auditors this. So I think, as far as I know, you don't have anything like that now.
I think it's an excellent question, and I've made a couple of mental notes along with the question that you asked earlier about if they've ever made a change to the draft report. I recommend that we bring these questions along with a couple of the other questions that I've received via email to the meeting, the CBOC meeting next Monday, and we ask the auditor themselves. I will be sharing the questions with them in advance of the meeting because I think you can get a better answer if someone has had time to do the prior proper planning. But I will add that to the questions that we ask. I do recall that because last year we published the questions and answers. So I will do my best to forward that exact question to him. And then I think that's the whole point of the meeting next week when we have the auditors there in person, is to ask them these questions so you can hear it from them. I am not an auditor.
So Eddie Bailey, this will be their 4th year in order. But what I'm saying is, they should give you a list of who did this audit on this date. So that we can make sure that we are following the law. We should ask for that.
Well, and that's something that we can just start to track. Maybe we add that to the website next to the link for the final draft report, who the managing partner was for that audit year.
And as you were saying with Don's question, in the 2021 audit, they did not put the scope, list in the scope, a recommendation that was made by North Avenue. And it was verified by them in the first year they did the audit. It was the
Time accounting.
And we sent it, we put a resolution in that, and we presented that in your program to the board. We checked with the controller. The controller said that they should have put that in the scope and that the board should ask them to make accommodation, not, either send an extra letter of verification or whatever. Have we ever gotten anything from them? I gave that email from the controller for this.
So I think just to kind of bring everybody back up to speed on that. So there was a previous year's recommendation related to the time accounting process. ID Bailey produced the report. They identified in the methodology of the audit, so in the scope of what they did, they identified that they did review the time accounting, and I can tell you they did, because they asked me for the timesheets and the journals and all of that work, and we provided everything to them. What they didn't do is they didn't include it in the section of the report that identified it as a previous year's recommendation. And so that report was already final. There was correspondence from the CBOC to the state regarding that recommendation. We did provide that to the auditor. The auditor said that, right, they had completed the scope of their contract and their work. And so if they were going to need to do additional work, that was going to be an additional cost for additional scope. And so if it is the desire of the CBOC to ask them to revise that final report, to add that information to another section of the report, even though it exists in a different section of the report, that would be at an additional cost to the district.
Actually, they recognized their mistake because they had a whole slide in their presentation listing scope, methodology, conclusion on that form. But they were not going to change the final report. That's the problem.
Well, and I think that's why it's so important that draft reports are brought forward, because when they're in draft form, there's a lot more opportunity to revise the report before it's made final and sent to the state.
Mr. Goffman, you have another question?
Real quick question. Off the top of your head, can you recall the last CBOC member that was on the implementation committee? I remember Anna Harris and maybe Mac Moore, but
It was, Mr. Moore.
he's been gone for what, 3 years at least? So we've had no CBOC representation on that.
We have not. We did speak with CBOC, chairman, or chair. Sorry if I'm not using the right terms, getting a little tired. And we did identify that that's one of the committees that we'd love to see the CBOC recommend someone to serve on.
Trustee Phillips, you have a question? Comment? Okay, to comments. We're gonna do 2-minute comments. We'll go with Trustee Phillips and Mr. Gosney, and then Trustee Reckler, and then we'll swing back around. Mr. Phillips, go ahead.
I asked the question earlier about whether any of those public agencies that investigated the bond program in the district at large found illegal activity. Because we talk like they did. We talk as a district like we actually did something wrong. And at the same time, we talk about the need to regain trust. And we're never going to regain trust as long as we continue to talk about ourselves like we committed illegal activity. Whether that is like board members committed illegal activities, or people on the CBOC and volunteers committed illegal activities, because nobody did. And I really think we need to reframe this conversation. And it's fine if we want to implement recommendations. But we're not implementing recommendations because we did something illegal, and we need to stop talking about it. Because we feed into the hype that we're a bunch of crooks, and that past board members and volunteers were a bunch of crooks. They weren't. And so I want us to stop beating ourselves. And when we talk about this program and these recommendations, and I have a lot more that I would like to say, we can go back around, but when we talk about this program and these recommendations, we need to talk about them like this. We didn't do anything wrong. We were thoroughly investigated, and it didn't come out that we did anything wrong. But because we believe it's important to have the best bond program that we can have, we have decided on our own to put these recommendations in place. That's how I would like to hear us as a district talk about this, because that is a completely different narrative than the one that people say about us and that we contribute to by beating ourselves.
Thank you so much, Trustee Phillips. Mr. Gosney, then Trustee Reckler, I believe. Go ahead.
First of all, I agree 100%. I could go on more and more, but I've only got my own 2 minutes worth here. This report says, and I quote, WCCUSD is committed to be good stewards of bond funds by ensuring transparency, accountability, systems thinking, and efficiency in the district's finances. I have no doubt that they believe this, but as the saying goes, the proof is in the pudding. After knowing of the alleged deficiencies for 8 years, the CBOC still doesn't know with any certainty that they've all been properly addressed. Let's not forget that the district is taking a boatload of money out of the classrooms to verify that when the district says an item has been properly addressed, it actually has been properly addressed. We have newer board members and CBOC members that wouldn't know that at one time the district reported that many dozens of these items had been addressed, but as we're seeing many years later, they couldn't prove to the watchdogs that they had actually been properly addressed. And even now, we just don't know. What some of you might not be aware of is that there were 7 items that were so secret that the CBOC and the public were not allowed to even know what they were. We were told that these items fell under attorney-client privilege, so they were too secret to share with anybody. I pointed out that since the district was the client, they could waive privilege, but they declined to share them with us. The problem with all of these is that these are all so old and outdated, there's really not hardly anyone left that can tell us what they're all about, especially the super secret stuff. How do we handle these? Do we just sweep them under the rug and pretend they never existed? We would all need to do a lot of work just to figure out what they were all about and whether they're even relevant today. And for the newbies in the room, the forensic accounting investigation was financed with $968,000 of borrowed money from the bond program, which means there was another $1.4 million in interest. On top of that, there was about $800,000 in staff and legal fees for a whopping $3.2 million to pay for that investigation. For 16 months in a row, I went on record pointing out that bond funds could not be used for audits, and senior staff rejected this. Then they decided I was correct, and a great deal of this had to be reimbursed from general funds to repay the bond program. How many teachers lost their jobs because of that? By the way, the auditors ran out of money before they could actually speak to the people who knew most about the bond program. So their audit isn't as complete as what they thought we were paying people. Thank you.
Trustee Reckler?
Thank you. Thank you for the report
Thank you,
and
Mr.
all the answers. So first to the CBOC and especially Mr. Gosney. So like as you're going through and as the CBOC is going through and the auditor doesn't accept your recommendations or whatever, I mean, like, I would encourage you to put that in your annual report so that it gets reviewed. Okay, they didn't change the preliminary, whatever it is, write it down so that the board can review it. Hopefully someday there's a joint meeting where we review the annual report. It's just not put on your website, but we sit down and we review it. And you bring up all of these things and then the board can decide to take action or not. So that's my opinion on how these things should get cataloged and get done. And I hope that you'll consider that. Second, on this task force, it is critical that you have an audit function. You have to have an audit function. I don't even think it should be an internal audit function. I think it should be an external audit function. But there has to be someone who's checking the boxes and saying, okay, this makes sense. You did this, you didn't do this, you didn't, and they need to have that audit lens. They have to have an accounting audit background. That's really important. And the district doesn't have an internal auditor. They got rid of it. I don't really think that's very smart, but, you know, for this, you do have to have it. And then, you know, just overall, whether it's systems or whether it's people or whether it's a combination of systems and people, that does need to align so that there is better transparency, accountability, and systems thinking. Once again, I want to also echo, this is not about this. This is about doing things better. But we have a big program, and it's important that it is constantly in a circle of improvement, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Madam Secretary, do you have any comments?
No,
Chair?
no.
Okay. We will go to the next item. We do have one more comment.
Public.
I don't know how many of you were actually involved in the forensic audit. I was executive director of Cocoa Jets at the time, and we pushed the old board very hard to authorize that forensic audit, and it was ended up very expensive to taxpayers, regardless of which pocket the money came from. one of the recommendations from the forensic auditor was that the district take legal action to recoup misspent funds. Keep in mind, the forensic auditor only examined a sample of the bond program transactions, as I recall, 11% of the bond program transactions in the bond program, something like $900 million or $1 billion or something, a huge amount of money. They only examined a relatively small sample and said that there was high probability of significant fraud, waste, and abuse. And the main recommendation from the forensic auditor to the board was that they seek legal action to regain and recoup misspent, fraudulently spent money. And the former board decided on the advice of their attorney not to take that legal action. It's the same attorney, incidentally, that was responsible for monitoring SGI Inc.'s compliance with the program management contract. And that was so egregious that even in their contract where they promised to disclose any and all records associated with the bond program, they refused to do that. And the board seated at the time refused to take action to force them to disclose the records to which the district had a complete right. So the point is, several times we talked about this district's need to reestablish trust with the public. Now you have an opportunity to do that. And I urge you to do whatever is necessary to do that, because right now there is still a cloud over this district in terms of the way it has in the past and may continue to be managing its bond program.
President Smith, that was the last.
Say it again.
That was the last comment on.
Thank you so much. We are now moving to, thank you for stepping in, I appreciate that. We are now moving to our second and final report, the bond program update on financial report. Ms. Payne, this is your item. It is 8:21, my friend.
That is right. And so thank you again for the opportunity to be here. One of the significant concerns that we've talked about is ensuring that we have timely financial reports. And so there was significant partnership in developing a suite of financial reports. Ms. Cha was amazing. She spent years developing these reports and doing this work. Since her absence, we have tried different ways to create a manual of how to do the reports, to try to bring in help to do the reports. We have tried to fill the position and we've struggled. And that was really evidenced, I think, in calendar year 23 when we didn't have the timely financial reports. And so this year we're back on track. But there's something that I'd like to demo with all of you right now, which is going to fundamentally change and improve the way that we are bringing financial information to everyone. We have been working on trying to build a live reporting portal. So at any time, with what will probably take 3 clicks of the mouse, anyone can go onto the internet and pull a project-specific financial report or a program-wide financial report for our program, which will report all the way back to 1998 and the original bond that built the building that we're in right now. And so we have been working on this for months. And we have really tried to bring the different recommendations that we've heard into it. So live reporting available at any time, program and project specific reports. We've heard from CBOC members, past and current, how different people interpret financial data, especially when it represents such a long period. And so we've built in graphics to help illustrate the data. We're building this so that we can expand our capacity to provide different type of custom reports. We also know how valuable photos are. And so we're working on building a segment of the reports that will show a handful of pictures for each project. We invite all of you to join us at our CBOC meeting on June 10th, when we plan to make this reporting module live for everyone. But tonight I'm gonna get to share with you a demo so that you can see the work that we've been doing. And so here it is. Hopefully you can see it. Welcome to our demo reporting portal. So, as stated here and as said earlier this evening, none of this would be possible or even be what it is without the partnership that's here in this room and maybe in Zoom land and from previous meetings. And so we really want to acknowledge that. But let's look at a report. So let's jump into a project status report. And so report past or present, we're gonna pick a current project that we're very excited about, and that is Lake. Again, this is a demo. We're still in testing. We're building out a photo library that will be located up here. We have a summary status here. As many of you know, we have leveraged almost $300 million from the state to make our local bond dollars go further. But in exchange for those dollars, there's a lot of reports that we have to do, a lot of audits that we have to do. So we're capturing the information to also support our state reporting that we're doing. We're working on building out graphics that'll help tell the story and help identify which bond fund is supporting the project. We've identified kind of those major components and building blocks of the financial reports that we've talked about at CBOC. We have a board-approved budget that we do not exceed ever. If we need additional funds for a project, we come to the board and we ask for those funds before we award a contract to ensure that we have enough budgeted dollars to do the project, or we make a change. We identify here our commitments, which are our contracts, our purchase orders, any dollar, any bond dollar that we're spending, anyone can find, see here, know who that money is going to. And then there's the dollars spent. We have our AP checklist, which identifies every single check that is issued on a monthly basis. This gives you that total. We have a segregation here of who our contractor is, who's our builder. Our construction versus our non-construction, because we've talked about there's a number of different consultants that support. We have inspectors and people that do testing, different types of services that support the project. And then there's a summary here. So that's our project specific, and you'll see there's a drop down here. So in June, jump on the internet, check out any project you like, anytime you want. You don't have to come to the CBOC meeting or go to the website to get it. You will see real data. We are updating this data daily. But maybe you want to look at the program as a whole. So a report that we've been working on and that I think our communities become more familiar with is our consolidated report, right? And so this is the one, again, you see those building blocks, budget, commitments, contracts, dollars spent, expenditures. But one of the things that's gotten tricky is how do you know the status of the project? So we've always said, okay, just look at the little asterisks. If there's a teeny tiny asterisk here, then you know it's active. Well, we're gonna do better than that. So we made another column because what we've heard is this needs to be more accessible. We've got a status column right there. Cameron critical needs, it's in construction. That work is happening. That work will soon be complete. Stige is another project that's currently happening. Maybe somebody pulls the project report for Stige and they say, well, I don't see as many commitments for Stige. Well, you could see right here, what's the status for the Stige project? It's in initial planning. That project is much earlier in the project cycle. So it would make sense if you looked at that project report versus a project report for a completed project that there's a lot less data, right? We're at the beginning and it's moving forward. This is just the beginning. I want to leave time for questions and comments. This is a demo. This is happening. We have a coder working on it full time. We have staff working on it full time. So I'm quickly going to jump to the end of the presentation, which is really what we heard and what we wanted to deliver on. And that was the actionable commitments. So staff and the Colby team are working together to finalize the testing and deployment of this live reporting module. Anyone can see and find the dollar any day at any time. And that data will be live and it'll be updated daily. We hope to launch it at the CBOC meeting in June. We hope you join us for that. But if not, we will have updated our CBOC website. We will have updated our program management plan, and we're going to be providing additional training and resource for it. And we hope you'll check it out. And more importantly, partner with us and tell us how to make it better, because this is just the beginning.
Thank you so very much. Board and CBOC board is 8:30. We have 15 minutes. We want to make sure we get your comments in. Do we have any public comment? Let's go first to public comment, just to make sure. Seeing none in the room, staff, do you have any public comment online?
No public comment.
Okay, board, we can do questions very quickly, please, then comments, and then we can move directly to board comments. Trustee Berkeley, you have questions?
To the CBOC, are you getting reports? We're starting to, yeah. Yes. Mhm. That's my only comment.
Any other questions? No? Okay, we can go to comments. Anyone have a comment? Mr. Gosney, go ahead.
Of course I do. I have full faith in the district's facilities team. Louis, Melissa, and Ellen are great to work with. They're always friendly, helpful, and often bend over backwards to assist in the oversight of the bond program. They have especially been all of this towards me. Okay, they cannot, however, provide the CBOC with the financial documents they need if the district staff responsible for those documents fails to make them available to them. Over the years, we've had some pretty sharp, astute, dedicated CBOC members, but as good as they were, they could not oversee the finances of the bond program when the data they need is kept from them. And how are the newer CBOC members supposed to learn how to do their jobs when they're not provided with the financial reports to accomplish this? Since the last joint meeting where the CBOC might express their thoughts too many years ago, the financial reports have been almost non-existent. What good does it do to have an oversight body when the financial reports they're scrutinizing are as much as 6 months slow in arriving? At that point, even if the CBOC discovers a glaring issue of concern, what can they do about it? Because of the difficulty in speaking at board meetings to alert the board and the public, sounding the alarm 6 to 8 months after the fact is a joke. And even if this were to happen, this announcement would have to be made at a public forum where the board cannot comment or ask questions. And depending upon what's happening at the meeting, as happened just a few weeks back, by the time we get called, we may only have 1 minute or less to sound the alarm. It's insulting. It goes to what I was saying a few minutes ago about the difficulty in getting the word out to the board and the public. Even though I've been publicly chastised, reviewed, criticized, and pretty much called a liar by members of the board, the CBOC, and district consultants, this was one of the things the grand jury was asking me about and looking at in 2021 through 2023. If the board wants the public to actually believe that they have any say in how the district is run, they need to make a concerted effort to give the CBOC the financial reports they need when they need them. It's starting to happen. In closing on this topic, over the years, the CBOC has worked closely with staff to tweak the reports so they are of more use to us, and the staff has worked to accommodate our needs. We thank you very much. Thank you.
Anyone else have a comment? Okay, I do have one comment. The board has initiated the opportunity for committees and PACs to come to the board and speak during that time that we had. Remember, there was a time where PACs and committees would come to the board. That is extended to the CBOC as well. So there are times that the CBOC can come to the board, just like just like ASAC, MDAC, PTO, and come to the board and take that opportunity to come and speak to the board. I just want to make sure that we all know that that's present and it can happen. There are timelines and deadlines that has happened before we have our agenda setting, so we can put it in the agenda to make sure that that time is allotted for each group. So I just want to make sure that that's out there. Let's go to our, thank you so much. Teacher Payne, thank you so much for your presentation. You always do a very fabulous, wonderful job. And for those of you who don't know, I call her Teacher Payne because she should be a teacher in our classroom. She is absolutely amazing, and thank you for the presentation. Board, we're going to do comments from the Board of Education and the CBOC members, 2 minutes. We're going to go, what is it, 8:45? Yeah, 2 minutes. 2 minutes, and we will start with CBOC members. Do you have any comments for your closing comments? Mr. Ghazi, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that the board acquiesced to allow a joint meeting between the elected board members and the appointed members of the CBOC. These joint meetings are the only time when the CBOC has an opportunity to voice their opinions on a couple of subjects. We're not allowed to have discussions at the board meetings, and even if we want to share with the elected board members and the public, we're only allowed to do so under public forum. We're allowed at most to speak for 2 minutes, and all too often only 1 minute. And we have to cram our thoughts on a vast number of items into this brief time frame. Quite frankly, you really can't include much substance into such a brief period. And because it's public comment, it's a one-sided conversation. From the perspective of the public, it's not as easy as we would like to reach out and connect with our elected representatives. Plus, there are too many differences of opinion where board members dislike the caller and either don't pick up or don't return calls and emails. Normally, we would be hearing a report on the bond program's financial and performance audits tonight, but these are not available for discussion tonight. Had they been, I would have brought up that a performance audit is supposed to actually audit the performance of the bond program. A couple of years back, senior district staff was able to convince the board that they could save a boatload of cash if they downsized the scope of this audit. And since several of the board members at the time really didn't appreciate the annoyance of the public looking over their shoulders, they were anxious to downscope the audit. Keep in mind that this is an audit overseeing how the board and staff is handling $2.4 billion of the taxpayers' money. And they are the only ones providing information to the auditors. Does anybody see a conflict of interest here? The auditors are no longer allowed to speak with or listen to anything coming from the community oversight body. These are the people that can show them which corner of the rug to pull up to see where things, and they need to see properly to do their job. Not enough time for me to go on the details here, but I'll forward more, and I'm not really sure that it will ever be read.
Anyone else have closing comments? CBOC members, board members, trustee Phillips, we'll just go right around this way. Trustee Phillips, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to go back to the second item for a moment. I agree with Mr. Gospel that it would be very difficult, even if the board decided to waive any attorney-client privilege, which I personally don't agree with. But even if the board did decide to do that, people aren't hearing you. Superintendent is different. The director of facilities is different. The board is different.
Even the attorney.
The attorney, everybody. It's so. I mean, even if the board did it, I don't think it would actually mean anything, right? So that's the first thing. And in line with that, it was 2016.
Am I wrong? That was when it was approved. Done during 50.
Yeah, it was approved in 2016. It was like 8 years ago. So we're, doing work, and I get it why it takes so long, but we're doing work that started 8 years ago, work that a board approved 8 years ago. I'm not saying that the remaining recommendations should be done or not be done, but what I am saying is, I think the actual board should actually look at the recommendations and decide if it wants to continue down that path. I'm not lobbying one way or the other, but when you start talking about staff is doing work that people told them to do 8 years ago, I don't think that's appropriate without input from the current board. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents, on that. And again, I'm not lobbying for one way or the other, and I know it takes a long time to get this done, and you guys have been working towards it diligently. So I'm not trying to say that time period has anything to do with it.
Thank you. Trustee Reckler?
Thank you. So in closing, I want to thank the CBOC. This is, I think, the most challenging volunteer position in the district. It's very challenging. And I worked with Brendan a little bit, but to Ms. Humes, I really want to say again publicly, I really appreciated your leadership of really bringing people along, and the amount of training and explaining that you did for all those meetings was really amazing. And I appreciate it. I learned from it, and I know everybody else did. So I just wanted to say that publicly. I also really want to thank staff. This hasn't been easy. There's a lot to do. And time, and again, you try and meet, very high bar of demands from the CBOC. They're not easy to work with. But they have definitely made the program better. There's no question about that. We have one of the largest programs in the state. To me, the community has been unbelievably generous, and I feel that we have an overwhelming obligation to steward the funds the best way we can, and to be very crisp and clear in the reporting and what is going on. It's very important to me. So things like reports, things like committee composition, things like training, those are all really important to me, and I feel an obligation as a trustee to make sure that you all are doing that, and so, and it's important that that keeps going. And also that there are continuous improvements in the system of bond management and the way that buildings are being built. So all of that is where my head is, and then finally, I'm disappointed that my revised policy hasn't come forward. When the board voted in January of 2023, they said that a new policy was going to come forward. There was going to be a committee that was going to look at that. We're now 15 months in, and that hasn't come to the board. I wrote my own copy and handed it in because I got so frustrated that nothing was moving. And so just to be full to me, and I don't care about the recommendations, whether people like them or not, I want the floor to be able to discuss that with all of you. And so I'm hoping that'll come forward soon. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the people for the work that they put in. I know you're working fast and you're very, good goals. I'm just, I want to see it. And, I'd also like to know the committee that was formed, with the, board and, superintendent first. We don't know the name of that committee. We don't know who's on that committee, how often we meet. That's to put in the recommendation for these three programs. And are your meetings open to the public? So if you could just tell us, send an email or whatever to give us an update on it.
I guess the implementation task force?
No,
or
you
you
want
talking
about the non-proposition 39. So these all fell under that. These were problems recognized under that. And you
I
had
just
your
wanna make
first
sure we
meeting
have
in
to-
March.
So because, can I respond?
Yeah, just, let's pause the time, because I just want to make sure that this is cleared up, so we have some clarity around it. Go ahead.
So because it is all related, we're using the implementation task force to also critically focus on those items that were brought forward in that meeting. So it's really hard to peel them apart. And so it's the implementation task force that's meeting, and right after your meeting, that's when there were actually two meetings. First, there was an initial meeting with the superintendent, and then we had a task force meeting. So it's the same committee that has both charge, both of those charge.
I want you to be able to finish your comments. You're finished, okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for attending the meeting. Thank you for your presentation. CBOC, thank you for attending the meeting. Thank you for having our joint agenda, and Chairperson Humes, thank you for co-chairing this meeting. I look forward to the next joint CBOC meeting that we already have scheduled. September, that we have scheduled for September. I encourage all board members and the community to attend the CBOC meeting in person or via Zoom. They are interesting meetings. I think that you learn a lot at those meetings, and you are able to have conversations, because you can ask your questions and you can state comments there. Also encourage CBOC members, please come to the board and take that opportunity that's allotted for committees to come and give reports. Come to the board meetings, give those reports, so you can speak directly to the board, so we can continue to have a transparent and open dialogue among each other. I think that we work best when we work as a team. I think that we cannot hold the sins of the people before us to us right now. We are doing different. So we have to be able to say, we are doing differently right now, not the people before us. We cannot dictate what happens after us, but currently we are doing a good job together as a joint CBOC and board committee. So thank you for that. My comments are complete. We are going to adjourn our next board meeting. We are adjourning at 8:44, and Oh, it does say 10:30 here on the thing. Oh, well, I think we're all finished. We are adjourning at 8:44. Our next scheduled board meeting is this Wednesday, April the 10th at the John Middle School, starting at 5:00. Closed session starts at 5. Thank you very much, everyone. Absolutely. Just 1 second before I hit this little gavel. Go ahead, CBOC.
Yeah, our CBOC meeting, the next one's next Monday, the 15th, 6:15 at the facility.
Thank you very much, everyone. We are adjourned, 8:44.